Jay is a PhD and he has over 25 years of experience as a clinician, coach, organization consultant, and mediator. In all of these roles, he facilitates collaborative relationships. Jay has delivered keynote speeches, developed training programs, and consulted with organizations on conflict management, collaboration, team building, and resilience. We all need a little of that resilience right now. Most recently, he developed Designing a Wealthy Life, an in-depth life wealth planning process for individuals and couples. He's co-founder of Wealth 360, and I'm sure he'll give you a little more information about that as he goes. Jay, welcome, and thank you for being with us today. Take it away, Jay.
Great. Thank you very much, Jennifer. I appreciate an opportunity to share my ideas that are really important to me. And I also want to thank Greg Wilson, who I've worked with on this project, integrating my expertise, my ideas with his planned giving work. And he's going to be doing another webinar a week from today, which I highly recommend, called Stick Figure Gift Planning. So let me dive in. And as I said, so I'm going to run this as if you were in the room with me. I would prefer if you were in the room with me, but of course that's not possible. So again, if you do have questions along the way, and I'm going to be asking some questions where I'm going to ask for some really quick responses. If you can put it in the Q&A, that would be great. So let me move ahead. So the topic is the gift of discovering a donor's money story. And I see my work as sort of a different approach, adding an outside expertise to the process that you're involved in. And I'm thinking that this can generate value in terms of understanding a donor on a very personal, emotional level. This is working in philanthropy is a relationship building kind of process. So it's about understanding the emotions, the needs, the purpose, what makes this person tick. That's the kind of approach and expertise that I want to talk about today. And in that conversation, I'm approaching it with that the donor's needs come first. Of course, when you're in an organization, you're trying to get a donor interested in your mission. You're talking about what you need. And in my thinking, a lot formed by my work as a psychotherapist. My job as a therapist is that the client's needs always come first. And I talk about myself sometimes in therapy, but it needs to be in the service of the need of the client. So here's the question. Why is it so hard to talk about money? Do we talk about money easily? I don't think so. So if you were all in this room together, here's how I would approach this question to demonstrate why it's so hard to talk about money. So I've got a question for you. It's one of those crazy psychology questions. What I'd like you to do is turn to the person next to you and tell that person the number that represents your total financial net worth. So I'm presuming if you're like most people, you think about, I'm going to tell somebody my bank account, you're going to hold back, right? So when I do this in a group, there's that moment of hesitation, a moment of anxiety. And I say, oh, no, I was just kidding. I didn't really mean for you to do that. That's so personal. Now, here's the real question. I want you to turn to the person next to you and tell them about your experience in losing your virginity. Okay, so my point here is it's that sensitive. Talking about money, even with friends, I don't talk to my friends about how much money I have or how much money I'm making. It's that intimate. So there's another crazy psychology question. What is money to you? So if anybody would be able to do this, just type in the first word or phrase of what is money to you. See if we can get even one or two responses. You know, you're not going to, it's still anonymous. We're not going to know who you are. Okay. Oh, okay. I got some. Yeah. Money equals choices. Wait a minute. A way of survival, opportunities. Yeah. Okay. So thank you for those. So the ability to provide, yeah. So those ideas are really the headline of your individual money story. And we each have a personal money story. And that money story is our internal narrative about the meaning and purpose of money. And it's always operating. And that money story is the source of all our emotions around money and all our decisions. It guides all our decisions about money. So we're constantly asking this question, what does this mean? And what's this worth to me? So in that sense, money decisions are connected to our deepest values in action. How we use money is actually a demonstration of our values in action. So money is sort of the pathway to understand what really matters most to an individual. So we have a relationship with money, in a sense. Mostly we don't think of money as a relationship, but I think it's an interesting framework. We invest ourselves, our time, our life energy in making money, and we expect money to satisfy many of our needs. Unfortunately, there's a lot of needs that money cannot really satisfy, but that people sort of wish money could satisfy. And as I said, embedded in our money story are deep values and what we hold to be a purpose beyond ourselves. So people always have a money story, even if you're not aware of it. And when you're not aware of it, and that money story is driving a lot of your decisions, those decisions may not be aligned with what you really want and what's truly satisfying to you. So what if we begin to think about applying that idea to why do donors give? And there's many reasons why donors give. There's many layers, and it's very personal, and it can cut to the heart of identity. And I want to take sort of a detour and go to a background question of sort of a core motive in all our lives, because we are social beings. At the core, we're social beings. So here's a demonstration of that idea. If you can see this this cartoon, we're bound together, and we try to get our needs met, sometimes at the expense of other people, other important people in our lives, and there's a cost for that, as you can see illustrated in this cartoon. So I'm saying we have two very deep drives that compete with each other. We want power. We want ourselves to, let me get this next. Yeah. There's this core human dynamic, balancing connection and cooperation, keeping relationships in good order, versus our other drive to be autonomous, to have power. And it's these social needs that provides substance and meaning in our lives. And it's really a core driver of so much of what we do. A great example of this was in the movie Castaway with Tom Hanks, where he gets marooned on an island by himself. And of course, if he's at a total loss, and he considers suicide because he's surviving physically, but there's really no purpose in his survival, it seems. And then he sort of accidentally creates Wilson, the volleyball, his partner, who actually helps him get the fire started. He can't do it, but with Wilson, he somehow does it. And then life takes on a tolerable meaning for him. And near the end, as he's trying to escape the island, he loses Wilson. Wilson floats away. And it's this really powerful, poignant moment of he feels horrible that he's abandoned Wilson. He hasn't taken care of Wilson, but he's really losing sort of the substance of his existence. We need to be connected to each other. So this brings us to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where of course physiological needs are most important, and then it goes up the scale to self-actualization, but I think with the idea that social needs are incredibly important, it's really a revision of Maslow's work. And so I read this book that I think was really powerful, really interesting, called Social: Why Our Brains Are Wired to Connect. And I just want to bring out one main point from this. They have these, it's called functional MRIs, and they can see brain activity when there's different stimulus that's presented to the person. And what they found is that physical pain and the emotional pain of disconnection or feeling criticized or feeling cut off, those two experiences trigger the same brain areas with similar intensity and primacy. So when we are feeling disconnected from people, and especially the important people in our lives, it's not just a minor hurt. It runs very, very deep. And so this secure connection with family, with community, to know that we belong, to know that we are valuable enough, lovable enough to belong, is really about survival, or at least that's how it feels. And in early man, in early human communities, it really was about survival. If we got cut off from the tribe, that meant death. So our social need, our need to connect, is so basic and primary, and is really as important as biological needs. So what I'm saying is this deep motive to be connected could be a primary designer of philanthropic mission. And my point here is that systematically defining and aligning an individual's purpose beyond themselves, their wish to improve things, to make things better in the human community, that process, that extra clarification, can enhance donor engagement and fulfillment. So I'm saying this as you try to connect with donors and develop relationships with donors, understanding them at this kind of level, at this kind of deep level, their purpose in life, purpose beyond the self, to make life better, is a really important piece. And these kinds of conversations that get to that kind of level, which are not simple, not matter of fact, but are doable, quickly deepens the relationship, your relationship with the donor. So, right, and when a person is engaged, when the a philanthropist thinks through these questions with the help of someone facilitating that, it strengthens their sense of community, their sense of connection, their self-worth, their wholeness. So it's a real gift to help facilitate that full awareness for the donor of what their aspirations are. And it's very personal, and gives them and elevates the meaning of philanthropy to them, which I think is something you're all trying to accomplish. So, so discovering a person's money story, and that's really the core of what I want to present to you and give you a sample of. And these are the two questions that I ask in a semi-structured interview protocol. And these are very personal areas I'm trying to explore. When you first, as a kid, when you first understood the idea of money, what was happening in your family? How was money talked about, and how was money used? And the second question is, what's been your most satisfying, meaningful experience with money in any way at any point in your life? And there's a lot in these questions. They lead to a lot of stories, they lead to a lot of experiences, and a lot of awareness. And oops, wait a second, too far. Nope, back. Oh no. How do I go in reverse? Here we go. Okay. Giving it away there. Okay. An important point here is that your personal money story is actually layered as a multi-generational story. It comes down the generations. So the early meaning of money that you learned growing up in your family is something that evolves as you move into your autonomous adult life. And it's written by experience and written by the meaning we make of what happens to us. That's another really important concept. As a kid, you're observing interactions and ideas and events around money, but two people can look at that same event and make different meaning of what happened, of what is the meaning of what's happening. And our money story acts as our lens on ourself and the world. So when I'm doing this presentation live, what I would do now is pair people off and have them interview each other about their individual money stories. And even in just 10 minutes, there's a surprising amount that you can get from this information. But since that's not practical in this format, what I'm going to do is what I guess is the next best thing is tell you my money story. Is have you get to know me as I take you through these questions and the background of my family. So that's what I'm going to do right now. Again, going the wrong direction here. Okay, so I grew up on an island, kind of cut off from the mainstream, from mainland America. That island is called Manhattan. And I lived in Manhattan with my parents, my two older sisters, and my grandfather. He lived with us. And right up the street lived my aunt, my mom's sister, and with her husband and her two daughters. So my cousins and my sisters were almost exactly the same age. We were always together, totally the closest friends. And when I was 8, my grandfather died. There was a dispute over the will. And from one moment to the next, we were cut off from the rest of our family. We stopped seeing my aunt, uncle, and cousins. There was an older brother too. So it was my mother's older brother and younger brother and younger sister, allied together against her. And that was the end. There was a lawsuit. It was probably even a ridiculously small amount of money. I have no idea. But we stopped seeing each other. So my grandfather came to America around 1900. This is, on the right is my grandfather with his parents, my great-grandparents, in Poland. It blows my mind when I see these pictures. My great-grandfather was a blacksmith, and you can see his hands are massive, powerful. So my grandfather, Ben Fuchs, came to New York from Poland through Ellis Island with basically nothing. And he actually ended up having a small business, a millinery business, women's hats. And that's how he made it through the 20s, 30s, 40s. They made it through the Great Depression. So I want to tell you about this moment of me understanding my heritage in a way that I hadn't before. This is a picture of the Lower East Side Tenement Museum. When my two daughters were about 10 and 12, we all took a trip to this museum. And in this picture, you see a room. The guide took us through the life experience of the family that lived in this 3 tiny room apartment where 6 children were born, and 6 days a week there was a small clothing factory in the house. And so hearing this story, hearing the kind of life and the struggles that these people went through, which was very close to what my grandparents went through. It really was a moment in time, a shifting moment in time. I went back and understood, like I'd never understood before, their sacrifice, their coming here with huge dreams to make life better, and their struggle just to survive and make it resulted in my parents moving up and having a solid, eventually middle-class lives, and then me building on that, having a much more comfortable life. And it just gave me this appreciation, this really powerful moment of, I am the living embodiment of their dreams, of what they went through. I am the result of that, which they never really would know. So a very powerful moment that still sticks with me in a very emotional way. So those experiences formed my money story. And here's a kind of a summary of my money story. At the center of it is something that my mother would say many, many times. There's no free lunch. Okay, there's many layers of meaning in that. You have to struggle. You have to work hard. You must work hard. If something comes too easily, don't trust it. So my parents grew up during the Great Depression. They lived in a scarcity mode, and that was real. And that scarcity mode, that need for security, money is security. You have to hold on to it. It's hard won. You can't just fritter it away. An example of that is when I was maybe 8 years old or so, I noticed I lost I had $5 in my pocket, and I lost it. And when my mother found that out, she blew up. This was like a huge disaster. I felt horrible. Oh my God, I lost $5. And another important part of money story for that was passed down is education. Education is for an immigrant, of course, is the pathway to integration and to success. So education became really important to me. And in my spending of money, and that scarcity model is still very much present in me. I'm still way too careful, more careful than I need to be about spending money, with one huge exception. When it was time to send my daughters to college, I very easily spent a good chunk of my retirement to make sure that they didn't have a lot of debt. So because education was that important, my money actions were very different from my day to day. So what I'm trying to present to you is here's a set of experiences that leads to a particular style and way of using money and living with money. And if you were to hear this from a donor, if you were to get this level of information from a donor, that would give you a big window on how to work with that donor and what would be important for that donor, how to connect with that donor over what would be most meaningful for that person. So, for example, if you heard this story, you might think that I'd be interested in donating to the cause of immigration, because that would mean something to me in terms of sort of reaching back in time to repay my grandparents for all their incredible hard work that led to the life that I have today. Okay, so this is just a really quick overview, a quick sample of how the money story develops, how you get to that money story, and then how you might use that information to guide a donor towards a mission, a philanthropic mission that would really be most satisfying to that person, that would really elevate their life. Okay. So in this interview, in this series of interviews that develops the money story, you're listening for the core themes, and you're listening for the meaning that the person, not just the experiences they have around money, but what those experiences meant to them. And one of the things I try to do is hone in on those themes and capture an image or a core anchor that encompasses those themes, and that can help to sort of clarify in a symbolic way what that money story is. So wait a second, I'm going back. No. Okay. So let me give you another example of an experience I had using this money story process. I was working with a couple in their 40s. He has a private family foundation. He inherited money from his dad. And so I peeled back the layers of their purpose with money, what's important to them, what's most satisfying, what would be the most satisfying kind of investment of their philanthropic foundation. And as we peeled back the layers, it was family was so important, and peeling back a little further, his relationship with his dad was most important. He had a more conflicted relationship with his mom. He was very close with his dad, who had died about 10 years before I was doing this interview. And he wanted to honor the legacy of his dad, and sort of honor the good job his father had done with him as a dad. So that led to the idea of investing in fatherhood programs. And I had this wonderful opportunity to explore the field of fatherhood. What's going on there? What kinds of programs are working? What's not working? I talked to lots of people, did a lot of research, and it led me actually to create our own program, which the donor funded, called Dad Lab. And the idea of Dad Lab is to help expectant fathers, I call them pre-dads, and new dads in the first year adapt to fatherhood, to become more engaged as dads. And the research shows that when new dads are more engaged with their babies, there's powerful benefits for the babies long term, for the moms, and for themselves. It just does some really powerful growing and connecting. And it's really my mission there is to build the family from the beginning. So it's the idea of prevention of so much distress later on. If you build a solid foundation of early relationships, then everything goes better based on that foundation. So I took this idea, ran with it with the help of this foundation, and established Dad Lab at Abington Hospital in 2017. And last year moved it to Einstein Medical Center in Philadelphia, where it's a whole different environment and a big challenge, but a really important place to work with new families. And I have some other branches of Dad Lab that I'm trying to reach out. It's an idea that I think is so powerful and so useful. So just to give you an example of sort of the result of one of my experiences in doing the money story process with a philanthropist. So I've been talking. This is the Oneway Street, and what I'm hoping is that we can hear some questions. I want to know if this information is new to you, what you think of it. Does it make sense to you? Could you see this set of ideas and a process working in your relationship development with donors? And that's something I'm sure it's maybe even more challenging these days with the pandemic to make contact and to develop relationships, especially new relationships with donors. And could you imagine using some of these questions, some of these directions to understand your donor better, understand the motives of your donor better, and help connect your donor to a more satisfying direction in their philanthropy? So we've got more than 10 minutes. Okay, so we got some questions here. I think it can help guide conversations with younger donors versus our older donor base. So I guess you're saying you think it would work better with younger donors? I wonder if you could. I'm wondering why you think it would be better with younger people than with older. Let's see if I can. I'm trying to access these. It looks like there's 10 questions. Money is freedom, ability to provide. Helpful more for the older donor base. Yeah, I mean, I would think in some ways it's more, there might be a richer conversation with an older person who has had more time to reflect and is more maybe in a retired mode. Let's see. Okay, any other reactions, thoughts, comments? Yeah, I mean, here's where I feel like my hands are tied behind my back. I think there'd be, there's more questions coming, but I'm having trouble getting to them.
Christine is looking at maybe with the younger donors, we could ask about their experience that they've heard of versus their personal experience. So maybe those stories that they've heard from the older generations, Christine, correct me if I'm wrong, but those, you know, what they've heard from their parents that is starting to form that money story. And just looking, and Christine, thank you for saying yes. Yes, just looking at, because they're just formulating that. So as donors, they're figuring out where they want to give and how they might want to give. Whereas the older donors have probably figured out what's turning their heart and what they want to do. And they've got that story established.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm trying, I know there's more there that I'm not getting to.
Some of them were your answers from earlier. The one question I had for you, Jay, is how do you start this conversation? You know, when you're sitting down with people, what's a great way to start breaking into this and asking them these questions? Yeah,
I mean, it is very personal, and you do have to approach it kind of sensitively. But I think you introduce it with perhaps something like, hey, I've just learned. I mean, if it's a new donor, you can say, here's something that I think it can be useful to understand you better. I'd like to hear about some of the history of your family with money. And if it's someone you have already worked with, you can say, hey, I've learned something new. I've come across this process, and I think these questions are interesting and useful. Another important point here is, as you're developing the money story, it's really helpful to, as a parallel process, to be revealing your own money story to the donor, to make it, to balance out that personal, intimate conversation. And I think I think another important point here is for you as a plan giver, a plan giving specialist, to know your own money story and to know how that money story may bias your work with donors. And so it's this real back and forth. And when you're open, I think that's another big trust builder, to be revealing of your family story and some of your experiences, and that's also a great way to connect. Yeah, so sharing your personal story actually can get the ball rolling. That's one way to pave the way and show that it's useful and interesting. Let's see what else. Yeah, the slides, I can make the slides available, sure. But what I really am hoping for is, if you have any interest or any questions that you want to clarify about this, give me a call when we could have a phone call one-on-one, because I think that's the best way to really begin to think about applying this approach. And I realize this is probably, or maybe ask you this: is this very different from what you've done, what you've been doing? How much of a sort of a disconnect would it feel for you to be asking these kinds of questions, to have this kind of conversation? is it so sort of apart from the norm of what you're used to doing? Because if it is, I think this is something that, as again, I'm sort of outsider to your profession, but it seems to me that if you're really truly relationship based and your purpose is to develop a solid, close personal relationship with donors, that this direction is something that can really make a difference, can really add to your understanding of the person and ultimately your leverage. I guess it's you can see development as a sales kind of model, and this is very different from a sales model because, again, as I said in the beginning, it's really putting the donor's needs front and center and keeping it number one. Okay.
And just looking at the questions, I can see Allison is concurring with you that, it's really about building that relationship.
Yeah.
And this is a deeper dive into that relationship and where it's going. And I think on the flip side, kind of looking at, yes, we want to build with our donors, but also looking at when you hear this story, we never want to do this, but it might be time to let a donor go if what they're truly saying is not aligned with your mission.
Exactly. And I think that's something that's very hard to face. But it really makes sense, because if someone is just there because of some sense of obligation rather than really wanting to be connected to your organization, it's not going to make a lot of sense. And in the big picture, you're trying to make the world better. And if somebody is going to be more engaged, more tuned in to a different mission, then that's what should happen. Again, it goes back to your values, and of course you have your obligations, you have your practical needs to generate donations, but stepping out of the sales mode, in my mind, again, as an outsider, just makes sense to me. Yeah. So Diane said it's a big change, but it's where development needs to go. Yeah, and it's not a simple thing. It's because it is so sort of starting from a different premise and a different set of skills. And in my work with Greg Wilson, as I mentioned, we're still in this process of trying to figure out how to integrate this kind of approach into what's happening already. It's different. It's not simple, but it sounds like there's some agreement that this is a very valuable and important growth direction for your field. And Allison said, I think you have to ask these questions when you have a strong relationship with the donor. Yes, but I think asking these questions can help create that strong relationship. People love telling their stories, their family stories. And when you know somebody's family story, there's an almost a automatic intimacy. It's not something that a person might naturally tell, but if you open up that door, I think a lot of people really want to walk through that door and enjoy it, and enjoy having somebody hear about their family experiences and even down the generations. It's a little bit like that moment I had at the Lower East Side Tenement Museum. It was this powerful sense of connection to my ancestors that I'd never experienced before, and it really meant a lot, and it's really stayed with me. So I think if you're going to help bring up those kinds of experiences, and a donor is sharing that with you, that's a huge boost to the relationship. Okay, let's see. We still have some time to go.
Do we have any other questions?
Amy wrote, relationship building and understanding the donor's needs is key. That's right. What's their need? What would be most satisfying to them? I think a lot of times a philanthropic mission is kind of hidden in pain. And somebody is needing to, for example, if somebody has addiction in their family, for example, they are primed to want to do something about that problem. And if they can make a contribution, it could actually help heal. Philanthropy can be one of the most healing experiences in someone's life. If they can compensate for some loss or pain or disappointment that they went through earlier in their lives, and make a difference in the world, even if it's not directly with their family, that is a powerful healing, wholeness kind of experience. And if you can guide people toward that, that's big. So again, I think if we could have this a conversation together that would spark ideas, there's probably much more that we could delve into. But like we're saying, we're kind of trapped in on the screen by the pandemic, and we're making the best of it. Okay, so if see, I think my contact information. Oh yeah, let me give this quote as kind of an end thought. Oops. What man really fears is not so much extinction, but extinction with insignificant. Man wants to know that his life has somehow counted, if not for himself, then at least in a larger scheme of things, that it has left a trace that has meaning. And I think we all want that. We're all grappling with life and death, the sense of death, the fear of death, and making a meaningful life is probably the best we can do to integrate death and be more okay with it. So again, I hope you've gotten some new ideas, some new perspectives from my presentation. Again, I welcome you to contact me with other questions, other thoughts, other reactions, and a conversation between us could really help also me further figure out how to integrate this in the world of philanthropy. Okay. Thank you very much.
Well, Jay, thank you very, very much. And I know we're all going to be out there practicing our money stories and thinking about that as we think about how we're going to be approaching our donors. And I know those conversations are going to be changing as well as we think about our money story and maybe talking to them about theirs and how we're going to start those conversations. So just thank you for giving us a lot of things to think about and discuss with our donors in the future. I do thank you, Jay, for giving a small plug to Greg Wilson. I do want to say, if you haven't registered for his seminar, please go ahead and do that. If you need to link to register for that seminar, you can contact me. If you wouldn't mind forwarding, my contact information is on one of these slides. So you can do that.
There you go.
As well, there's my contact information. Please feel free to call me, whether you want that registration or you want to learn a little bit more about Univest Foundation, or if you didn't catch Jay's contact information, I can certainly forward that on to you. But just thank you everyone for attending. If you have questions, you think of them today or tomorrow, feel free to ask them. And then have a great rest of your afternoon, and hopefully I'll see you next week.